Let's dive into one of Hollywood's greatest legends, the rumored romance between Marilyn Monroe and Elvis Presley. I mean, it's a story that just sounds so perfect it almost has to be true, right? Well, today we're going to find out if it actually was.
So here's the big question, the one that's been fueling gossip for decades. Did they, or didn't they, have a secret romance? The idea is just so captivating. But if we peel back all the layers of fantasy and myth, what does the real evidence tell us? Let's find out.
I mean, seriously, it's Hollywood's ultimate what-if, the king of rock and roll and the ultimate blonde bombshell. But before we get too swept up in the rumors, we have to ground ourselves in reality and figure out when, or even if, their paths could have possibly crossed.
Okay, so first things first, context is everything. You might actually be surprised to learn that for any kind of romance to have happened, it would have had to squeeze into an incredibly tiny window of time.
Just take a look at this timeline. Marilyn was almost a full decade older than Elvis. So by the time he was really hitting his stride as a Hollywood star in the late 50s, Marilyn's career was already in its final, more difficult years before her tragic death in 1962. They really were like two massive ships just passing in the night.
And that 8.5-year age difference? It's actually a really big deal. Just think about it for a second. When Elvis was this rising rock and roll kid, Marilyn was already a global superstar, married to the famous playwright Arthur Miller. They were just in completely different worlds.
So when you put it all together, the age gap, their careers heading in different directions, and of course, Marilyn's early death, the actual window of opportunity for them to even meet, let alone have a romance, just shrinks down to a few short years.
So the big question remains, did they ever meet? Well, according to most serious biographers, yes, once. And it's this one, super brief encounter that became the tiny kernel of truth that an entire mountain of fiction was built on.
This account comes from Joe Esposito, who was a core member of Elvis's Memphis Mafia. This is someone who was with him pretty much 24/7. And he described a really simple chance meeting. A hug, a few words were exchanged, and that's it. The whole thing was over in like 3 minutes.
And the setting wasn't some glamorous secret location. It was just the Paramount Studios lot, back in 1960. They literally just happened to be walking past each other. So the most believable story we have isn't one of passion, it's just one of professional politeness.
But let's be real, a 3-minute hug doesn't exactly sell magazines, does it? So now let's get to the other story, the one that's way more elaborate, way more sensational, and the one that has truly captured everyone's imagination.
This is what's known as the tryst narrative. The story goes that they had a secret, pre-arranged, one-night affair at a hotel in Beverly Hills. I mean, this is the version everyone wants to believe. But who even started this rumor in the first place?
So what you have are two totally competing stories. On one side, a brief public encounter remembered by Elvis's closest friend. On the other side, a secret hotel tryst claimed by only one person, a former Hollywood agent named Byron Raphael.
So, why is this big, juicy rumor so widely discredited by historians? Well, it really all comes down to the source. The entire story hinges on one person's account, an account that's been called inconsistent over the years. And, maybe most importantly, it was flat out denied by the people who were actually in Elvis's inner circle, the ones who would have known. It's like a house of cards with no foundation at all.
And that brings us to the most telling part of this entire mystery. What the actual evidence, or more importantly, the lack of it, really tells us. This is where we have to talk about what's called the archival silence.
All right, so after all the stories, all the rumors, what can we actually prove? What do the cold, hard facts in the historical record show us about any kind of connection between Marilyn Monroe and Elvis Presley?
The answer is a shocking amount of nothing. There are absolutely zero authenticated photos of them together. You know those famous images you've seen online? They're all clever fakes. There are no letters, no studio memos about a potential movie together. And beyond that one brief hello, there are no other credible eyewitnesses to any kind of relationship whatsoever.
And this is exactly why the consensus among historians and biographers is so clear. The evidence, or lack of it, overwhelmingly points to one conclusion. If they even met, it was brief and totally unremarkable. The grand romance story just has no verifiable support. Period.
And here is the real takeaway from all of this. When you're talking about two of the most photographed people on the face of the earth, the complete lack of evidence becomes the evidence. For Marilyn and Elvis, this archival silence is absolutely deafening.
Which leaves us with one final, fascinating question.
If the romance is a total myth, why do we want it to be true so badly? What does our collective obsession with this story say about our need for these kinds of larger-than-life legends? It's definitely something to think about.